My name is Vanessa Clark. I am 45 years old from Seattle, Washington. What would you do if your husband walked out on you the moment your baby was born just because she was a girl? Would you beg him to stay, or silently promise yourself you'd never need him again? And if that same man, who abandoned you without a second thought, showed up 20 years later at your door weak, dying, and desperate, would you let him in? Or remind him of the life he chose to throw away? Because when he came back into my life, I thought I was ready for closure, but what he said next changed everything forever. I still remember the smell of antiseptic in the delivery room, the harsh white lights above me, and the overwhelming mix of pain and anticipation racing through my body. For hours, I had been fighting through contractions, holding on to one single thought that kept me going: we were about to become a family. I believed that moment would bring us closer, that everything we had been through would finally make sense. And then I heard it. "It's a girl." The nurse's voice was warm, almost celebratory. She placed my baby gently on my chest, and in that instant, the world around me disappeared. Her tiny fingers curled instinctively, her soft cries filling the room. It was the most beautiful sound I had ever heard. My heart felt like it would burst. I didn't care about anything else. Not the pain, not the exhaustion, not even the future. All I knew was that she was mine, and I already loved her more than life itself. But then I looked up at him. I was expecting tears, a smile. Relief, something, anything that mirrored the love I felt in that moment. Instead, I saw something that made my chest tighten. His face had gone completely still, not shocked, not even confused. Just cold. His eyes weren't on me or the baby. They were fixed somewhere else, like he was trying to process a disappointment he hadn't prepared for. "A girl," he said slowly. At first, I thought I had imagined the tone. Maybe he was just overwhelmed. Maybe it hadn't sunk in yet. I forced a weak smile, trying to bridge the gap between us. "She's perfect," I whispered, hoping he would step closer, hoping he would look at her the way I did. But he didn't move. Instead, he let out a quiet breath, almost like frustration, and shook his head slightly. It was subtle, but it was enough. Enough to shatter the illusion I had been holding on to. "I needed a son," he muttered. Those 4 words didn't just hurt, they echoed. Loud, heavy, and impossible to ignore. I stared at him, waiting for him to take them back, to laugh it off, to realize what he had just said in one of the most important moments of our lives. But he didn't. The nurse shifted uncomfortably. I could feel the tension in the room, thick and suffocating. No one knew what to say. No one knew how to fix what had just broken. I looked back down at my daughter, trying to shield her from a moment she wouldn't even remember, but one that would define everything that came next. "She is enough," I said quietly, though I wasn't sure if I was trying to convince him or myself. But he had already checked out. He didn't hold her, didn't touch her. Didn't even look at her again before stepping back, creating a physical distance that felt symbolic of something much deeper. In that moment, I realized something terrifying. This wasn't just disappointment. This was rejection, and not just of her, of us. The days that followed were worse than I could have imagined. He became distant, almost like a stranger living in the same house. Conversations turned into silence. Silence turned into cold, clipped responses. And before I could even process what was happening, the word divorce entered the room like an uninvited guest that refused to leave. I remember sitting there, still recovering, still trying to adjust to motherhood, while he spoke about expectations and legacy, like we were discussing a business deal instead of a family. "You don't understand," he said, avoiding my eyes. "I needed a son to carry my name." That's when it hit me. This was never about a child. It was about his ego, his pride. His outdated belief that a daughter could never measure up to whatever image he had built in his mind. And just like that, the man I thought I knew, the man I trusted, loved, and built a life with walked away. Not just from me, but from a newborn baby who had done nothing but exist. And as I held her that night, listening to her soft breathing, I made a promise I would never break. If he could walk away that easily, then we would learn how to survive without him. And one day, we would prove just how wrong he was. For years, I carried his words like a scar that never quite healed. I needed a son. It didn't matter how much I tried to move on, how strong I pretended to be, or how beautifully my daughter grew into her own person. Those words had a way of echoing back to me in the quiet moments. Late at night, during milestones he never showed up for, in the spaces where a father's presence should have been. A part of me had accepted it, not because I believed him, but because I had no choice. I told myself that maybe, in his world, sons meant legacy and daughters didn't. Maybe his thinking was outdated, broken, but fixed in a way I could never change. So I stopped trying to understand it. Until one SLU moment changed everything. It happened on an ordinary afternoon. I was at a clinic, sitting in the waiting area while my daughter, now a teenager, was getting a routine checkup. The TV in the corner was playing some medical program, the kind I usually ignore. But a sentence caught my attention, almost like it was meant for me. The gender of a baby is determined by the father's chromosomes. I froze. At first, I thought I misheard it. My mind replayed the sentence over and over again, trying to process it. Determined by the father, not the mother. I leaned forward slightly, my heart starting to race as the doctor on the screen continued explaining it in simple terms. How the mother always contributes an X chromosome, and the father contributes either an X or a Y. XX results in a girl, XY results in a boy, which meant I felt something shift inside me, all those years, all that blame. All that silent guilt I didn't even realize I had been carrying deep down, like maybe, somehow, I had failed him. It was never mine to carry, it was his. I sat there, completely still, as the weight of that realization settled over me. It wasn't just a fact, it was clarity. Sharp, undeniable clarity that cut through years of confusion and pain. He didn't just abandon us. He abandoned us for something that was entirely his. I let out a slow breath, but it didn't calm me. If anything, it did the opposite. A quiet anger started building, rising from a place I had kept buried for far too long. Because suddenly his decision didn't just feel cruel. It felt ignorant, unfair, unforgivable in a way I hadn't fully allowed myself to see before. I thought back to that moment in the delivery room, his expression, his disappointment, the way he said, "A girl," like it was a mistake that needed correcting. All this time, I thought he was just blinded by his expectations. But now I realized something deeper. He didn't even understand what he was blaming me for, and yet he destroyed our family over it. I glanced toward the hallway where my daughter was, laughing softly with the nurse, completely unaware of the storm inside me. She had grown into someone so full of life, so strong, so unapologetically herself, and he missed all of it, her first steps, her first words. The first time she rode a bike, the first time she stood up for herself, the first time she achieved something she was proud of, all because he couldn't accept a truth he didn't even understand. That realization hurt, but it also did something unexpected. It freed me. For the first time in years, I felt the last piece of guilt leave my body. I wasn't the woman who failed to give him a son. I was the woman who gave life to a daughter he didn't deserve, and that changed everything. It changed the way I saw the past. It changed the way I saw myself. And most importantly, it changed the way I saw him. He was no longer this powerful figure who made a painful choice that I couldn't comprehend. He became smaller. A man who let his ego, his ignorance, and his outdated beliefs cost him the most important relationship of his life. I didn't feel the urge to confront him. I didn't need to. Because the truth had already done what no argument ever could, it exposed him. Completely. And as I sat there, watching my daughter walk toward me with that same bright smile she'd had since she was a child, I realized something that filled me with quiet strength. One day, he would have to face this truth too. And when he did, it would hit him harder than anything I could ever say. It was a normal evening, quiet, predictable, safe. The kind of evening I had built my life around over the past 20 years. I was in the kitchen, absent-mindedly stirring a pot on the stove, while my daughter sat in the living room, scrolling through something on her phone. There was a calmness in the air, the kind that only comes after years of surviving chaos. No tension, no uncertainty, just peace. And then there was a knock at the door. It wasn't loud, not urgent. Just deliberate. At first, I ignored it. We weren't expecting anyone. Most people who knew us would call first. But then it came again, slightly firmer this time. Something about it made my chest tighten. "I'll get it," I called out, wiping my hands on a towel as I walked toward the door. I don't know why, but with every step, I felt this strange sense of unease building inside me. Like something I had buried long ago was slowly rising back to the surface. I reached for the handle. Paused, and then opened the door. For a second, my mind refused to process what I was seeing. The man standing in front of me looked like a stranger. Thin, pale. His shoulders slightly hunched, like the weight of something heavy had been pressing down on him for years. His hair, once dark and full, was now streaked with gray. His face aged, tired, almost hollow, but his eyes, I recognized those. And suddenly it hit me. It was him, my breath caught in my throat. My fingers tightened around the edge of the door as a wave of shock ran through my body. 20 years. 20 years of silence, and now he was standing right in front of me like no time had passed. For a moment, neither of us spoke. We just stared at each other. "You," I finally whispered, my voice barely audible. He swallowed, like even saying my name required strength he wasn't sure he had. Vanessa, hearing my name from his lips again, felt wrong, like it belonged to a different life. A life I had fought so hard to move on from. My first instinct was to close the door. To shut him out the same way he had shut us out all those years ago. And honestly, I almost did. But something stopped me. Maybe it was the way he looked. Not just older, but broken. Completely broken. "What are you doing here?" I asked, my voice sharper now, guarded. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he shifted slightly, like even standing there was exhausting. I didn't know where else to go," he said quietly. That sentence alone stirred something complicated inside me, anger, disbelief, and something I didn't want to name. "You have a lot of nerve showing up here after. I'm dying." The words cut through everything. Clean, direct, final. I froze. For a second, I thought I had misheard him. But the look on his face, there was no mistaking it. No exaggeration, no drama, just truth. "I don't have much time left," he continued, his voice trembling slightly. "And there are things I need to say before it's too late." The air between us felt heavy, suffocating. Part of me wanted to laugh, not because it was funny, but because of the timing. 20 years of silence, and now suddenly he had something to say. Now. "You disappear for 2 decades, I said slowly, my anger rising to the surface. "And the only reason you come back is because you're dying." He lowered his gaze, unable to meet my eyes. "I deserve that," he admitted. Yes, he did, but somehow that didn't make it easier. Behind me, I could hear faint movement, my daughter shifting in the living room, unaware that the past she had stopped asking about was standing just a few feet away. And that's when reality hit me harder than anything else. This wasn't just about me anymore. This was about her. He took a small step forward, hesitant. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," he said quickly, almost like he knew he had no right. I need a chance to explain, to tell you the truth. The truth, after 20 years. I looked at him, really looked at him this time. At the regret in his eyes, the exhaustion in his posture, the way he seemed like a shadow of the man who once walked away without looking back. And for the first time I saw it. Not power, not control, not even pride, just loss, deep, irreversible loss. I tightened my grip on the door, my mind racing. Every instinct told me to shut him out. To protect the life I had built, to protect her. But another part of me, the part that had lived with unanswered questions for 20 years, wanted to know, why now, why like this? And what truth could possibly be worth reopening wounds I had spent a lifetime healing? I took a slow breath. And in that moment, I realized something terrifying. Opening that door wasn't the hard part. Letting him speak, that was where everything would change. I stood there, still holding the door, my heart caught somewhere between the past and the present. For 20 years, I had imagined this moment in different ways. Sometimes I pictured him coming back successful, proud, pretending nothing had happened. Other times I imagined confronting him, finally saying everything I never got the chance to say. But never like this, never broken, never dying, and definitely never asking for anything. "I don't have much time," he said again, his voice quieter now, almost fragile. "I know I don't deserve anything from you, but before I go, I just need one chance to make things right." "Make things right," I repeated, my voice steady but cold. "You walked away from your own child. There's no version of this where that gets fixed." He nodded slowly, like he had already accepted that truth long before showing up here. "I know," he said. "I've known for a long time." There was a pause, heavy, uncomfortable, filled with everything we weren't saying. Then he looked up at me, and for the first time since he arrived, there was something different in his eyes. Not regret, not fear, but desperation. "I want to see her." Those 5 words hit harder than anything else he had said. For a moment, I couldn't even respond, because suddenly this wasn't just about closure or explanations or guilt. This was about my daughter, the same daughter he had rejected before even holding her, the same daughter who had spent years wondering why she wasn't enough. The same daughter who had finally learned to live without him. "No," I said immediately, the word coming out sharper than I expected. He flinched slightly, but didn't argue. "She doesn't need this," I continued, my voice rising now, fueled by years of buried pain. "She doesn't need you showing up now, turning her world upside down just because you suddenly feel guilty." "I'm not doing this for me," he said quickly. I let out a bitter laugh. "Everything you've ever done has been for you." That silence returned again, but this time it felt different. He didn't defend himself, didn't argue, didn't try to justify the past. Instead, he reached into his coat pocket with shaky hands and pulled out a small envelope. "I wrote something," he said, holding it out toward me. "For her. In case you say no." I didn't take it right away. I just stared at it. That single envelope felt heavier than anything he could have said. "I know I have no right to ask this," he continued, his voice breaking slightly. "But I've spent 20 years living with what I did. Not a day goes by where I don't think about her, about you, about the life I threw away for something so stupid." My chest tightened, because I knew now it was stupid. Painfully, undeniably stupid. "I thought having a son would make me feel complete," he admitted, "but all it did was show me what kind of man I really was, and by the time I realized it, it was too late. Too late." Those words echoed in my mind, because they were true. He had missed everything, every moment, every memory, every chance to be a father, and now he wanted a piece of something he had abandoned. "I don't expect her to forgive me," he said. "I don't even expect her to want to see me, but she deserves to know that none of this was her fault. That she was never the problem I was." That stopped me, because for years that was the one thing I had tried to protect her from, that feeling, that doubt. And now the only person who could truly erase it was standing right in front of me. I glanced back toward the living room. She was still there, still unaware. Still safe in the life we had built together, and I realized something in that moment. This wasn't about giving him closure. This was about giving her the truth, but truth comes with a cost. It opens doors you can't close again. It brings emotions you can't control. And once she saw him, once she heard his voice, once she understood who he was, nothing would ever be the same again. I looked back at him, then at the envelope in his hand, and slowly I reached out and took it, not as forgiveness, not as acceptance, but as a decision. A decision that wasn't easy, wasn't fair, and definitely wasn't simple. Because sometimes, strength isn't about holding on to the past, and it isn't about revenge either. Sometimes, it's about choosing what's right for the future, even when it hurts. If this story touched your heart, if you've ever been abandoned, judged, or forced to prove your worth, don't forget to like this video and share it with someone who needs to hear this today. And tell me in the comments, what would you do in her place? Would you forgive him or walk away forever? Your voice matters here. Subscribe to the channel for more powerful, emotional, real-life inspired stories, because sometimes the truth is more shocking than fiction. And remember, Not everyone who leaves deserves a second chance, but sometimes the truth deserves to be heard.